boy, I boot everybody in Cyberland. It's your favorite Babalao. At least I hope so. Omodung, Odileke, coming at you with another podcast. Alright, guys. Hey, again, if you're not catching up to these podcasts, you got to catch up to them. You got to see what they're about. Because this is the no holds bar. This is the let's just have the real talk, right? And today's episode, right? I wanted to share with you some of my perspectives on certain things that I see a lot, man. And I mean, and it's almost embarrassing sometimes to even see it, because I don't think people truly understand or grasp the importance of certain concepts within the faith. Which then makes me think, like, man, did you really jump into this blind? And if you did, I mean, how do you repair it? How do you find yourself, I guess, truly understanding, where you're going and how you're going, right? If the foundation is wrong, then how do you know where you're going? Okay, so here's the premise, right? Today I want to talk about Ita, right? Or Itang, right? We call it. And the reason why we call it as such is because, we recognize within our culture, within our tradition, right? When we talk about Lokumi, when we talk about our Afro-Cuban lineage, right? We understand that when we go through initiations, or when we need the orishas to speak to us, that it's a 3-day process. That's the reason why it's called Itang. So when you look at it, there's a couple of things that, that just have to stick out, right? And I think that this is the real talk that a lot of people are just not getting. And I don't know why. I really don't. If you decide that you want to hear an Orisha speak, then it's because you want to listen. You would assume that, right? You would think that makes all the logical sense in the world. Which means that if the Orishas are saying, hey, you're destined for X, Y, and Z, and you need to stay away from this, and you need to focus on this, and be careful with this. You get the whole list of advice. And you decide not to follow that advice. Whose fault is it? That's the big question, right? And here's the reason why I asked this question, right? Very rhetorical question. I don't expect the podcast to talk back to me, but I need to get this out there. I need people to understand where my head is. Why ask for advice that you're not willing to take? Why spend money, time, effort, right? And when I say time and effort, I'm talking about other people's times, other people's efforts, to include your own. Why would you waste so much just to merely turn your back and ignore the advice? Only to come back later saying, uh-oh, I screwed up. Uh-oh, I decided not to follow a piece of advice. You know what I mean? And uh-oh, like I spilled some milk, I understand. Everybody is going to make a mistake from time to time. No big deal. We'll adjust fire. We'll consult. We'll see how is that detrimental to your path. And we'll move on with our lives. But if you are making a conscious decision not to follow your ita, then you are already starting wrong. And here's something that I need you guys to understand, right? Here's the foundation, right? We all begin somewhere. So let me explain the beginning so that you understand what the end looks like. In the beginning, for those of you who received an ita, Your very first ita should always be your hand of Ifa, your awofaka, or your ikofa, right? Whether guy or girl, right? Guy's awofaka, girl ikofa. Okay, your first ita, right? They fed all your stuff, right? You did things with the eguns, you did things with the warriors, you fed everybody, everybody's good, right? You probably came back the next day, you cleaned your stuff off, you have a rogacion. And then the third day came and you had an ita, right? And in this ita, you began to get advice. It went through a long process, right? And in that long process, that was the very first time that you got to hear from the Orisha. You got to understand who you are. You did all of that to get to this point merely for what? To follow the advice or not. Get into spiritual alignment or not. Waste everybody's time or not. So then that's where I struggle. That's where my big struggles are happening, right? Do not, right? I can't even say don't. I'm just going to say do not, right? Do not. Don't go through an ita if you're not going to follow the advice. It's that simple. That's simple. Now, that is the first time you receive an ita. There are other times when you receive different divinities from Ifa that you are going to get another ita. Same process applies, right? You feed and then you hear. You feed, then you hear. I'm not going to get too much into the 3-day rule and the ita and this, that, and the other. Things vary based on situations and things that are going on. However, that's not the point. The point here is you received an ita. You received advice. You received destiny. You received the good word. You received something that either you can take with you and be successful or not. Second time you get your ita, right? Now, this is where it gets interesting. A lot of people don't understand their itas, all right? The first one, Mano de Orula, destiny, where you're going, what are the pros and cons in your life, who's your guardian Orisha, and you begin to put all these things together, or the Babalao puts all these things together for you and begins to give you a good outline of who you are. Boom. Make sense? Okay. Second time, let's say it's Olokun. Olokun of Ifa has an ita. All right? Olokun of Ifa has an ita. You're going to go through a very similar process on day 3 that you did when you received your Mano de Orula. And now you get to hear what Olokun has to say. But this is where we're missing the mark, people. Olokun is representative to what in your life? That's where you need to focus on. You need to say, who is Olokun in my life? And the advice that Olokun is going to give you at that moment is based on the attributes and characteristics of Olokun in your life. Not necessarily that Olokun is, he gave me an ita, so that applies to everything in my life. If I'm working, if I have a family, if I have a relationship, if I have... No. That is not an ita. That is not an ita that applies to those situations. Itas are designed for you to listen to that Orisha speak about what is applicable to that Orisha, which then you apply to what's applicable in your life. All right. Makes sense? Right? Some Orishas, you have itas. Some Orishas, you don't have itas. When it comes to consecrations in Ifa. Now, let's talk about other itas. Maybe it's not Ifa. Maybe it's Ocha. And I'm not going to dig super deep into Ocha. I'm not going to dig in deep to the all Orishas. But I would say that the same thing I just told you about Olokun, I need you to focus that same concept to your orishas. For example, and here's the best example that I can give you. If you have relationship problems, or you want to reinforce your relationship and you want to ask the orishas, hey, can you give me some extra blessings? Or, hey, bless me with love, right? You're not trying to do anything specific, but you're just looking for the 5 major things in life. I tell people all the time, between love, prosperity, tranquility, right? Health, blessings in general. Those things are all beautiful things to ask the orishas, right? So if you go to the orisha, you say, hey, can I get some love? You know what I mean? Because, my relationships, I'm trying to strengthen my relationship. Does it make sense to go to the foot of Ogun for relationship advice? You're talking about an orisha that is impulsive, that is war-bound, that is a worker, doesn't necessarily have very good relationships when it comes to intimacy. So why would you go to Ogun? Okay, you guys following me so far? So now let's reinforce that even further. Who should you go to for relationship problems? Okay, maybe you should go to Ochun, who is the divinity of relationships and femininity and love and passion. That's Ochun. So you need to understand who you are attracting and what power you are attracting in order for you to enact it. The same goes for your ita. So therefore, relationship problems, go to Ochun. For family problems, go to Yemaya. You see what I mean? That's how you need to apply your itas. Your itas are all the keys to your success. The big key, Ifa, your mano de orula. That is the key that opens up all the doors for you because it's a general key that lets you in the house. And let's talk about that. It's an analogy, right? Your ita, your first ita is your key to your mansion. Imagine if you had a mansion. Okay. And you open up that front door with that first key. And you're like, man, you feeling good. You're like, man, this is a beautiful house, right? Beautiful house. But all the rooms are locked. The kitchen's locked. The living room's locked. The bedrooms are locked. The bathroom's locked, right? And you're trying to gain entrance to one of those rooms. So go do it. However, you have to use the right key. So let's say it was the key to the family room, right? You take the Yemayaki and you open it up and you go inside and you don't put your feet on the furniture. You don't, use the coaster. Hey, don't smoke in the family room. Don't bring food in there. I don't know. Whatever rules you may have for the family room. Or what does this world have in store for you for the family room? So now you go into that family room with a set of rules. That's your ita. That is your ita. In the family room, you look towards Yemaya because Yemaya has a lot to do with family. And then in the bedroom, maybe, that's where you get busy and you get your intimacy going. So you get the Ochunki and you follow the rules that go into that room. And you apply that just like that. Just like that. That's where I am trying to apply this rationale, this logical thinking, this better understanding of what you have and what you're capable of doing with it. Because when you follow the rules, beautiful things come. Hear me out again. When you follow the rules, beautiful things come. Now, let's dig a little deeper now. Now you guys kind of have a general understanding. Use the right ita for the right situation, for the right times, and don't mix and match things that you don't need to mix and match. If you make a mistake, see your Olul CYU for Ifa stuff, see your Olorisha, your Santero, Santera, whatever you want to call it at that point, for your Ocha stuff, and move out. Move out. Okay? That is your Ita. Now, there's another Ita we don't talk about a lot, and it's a shame. It's a shame. Why? Because a lot of the Isheshe, the African, actual traditionalists, that from Africa, they kill me. They kill me with this, right? They have all these cults, the cults of Orun. They got a cult of different societies of Eguns, cults of the Iyamio, Shorongas, and all these different cults, right? All these little societies, and they kill me because they have a representation of Egun. They understand the representation of Buruku, the darkness and the obsession. They understand these things, but they don't apply it like we do. Man, nobody applies Egun worship like we do. Diaspora, the Afro-Cuban here in the U.S., right? The yellow and green beads, right? That make it easy for you guys to understand. So what does that mean? That means that there is another Ita technically. Not an actual Ita, right? Because some things that we call Ita sometimes are just advice. But advice nonetheless is perfect when it comes from a higher power or something from the other side. All right? And that's the spiritual masses that we hold. When we grab mediums and we grab spiritualists and we sit them around a table and we have this table that has glasses of water with flowers and we got different perfumes and incenses and candles are burning and they're singing and they're chanting and they're pulling down the power of Egun, of the dead, the ancestors, the people that walk with you. Never underestimate the power of the advice that you can get from an investigative mass. Something that's just for you. I'm not talking about this show of, we got 20 people in a room and somebody gets mounted and now everybody's getting advice, right? I'm not talking about that type of, that level, I guess, of ceremony. I'm talking about an investigative mass. I would tell you that personally, I have every one of my godchildren do an investigative mass. Why? Because they need to understand who is in their spiritual framework. Because we understand our ancestors, grandparents, aunts, uncles, great-grandparents, people who have passed away, people we have relationships with. I get all that stuff. But believe it or not, there's other commissions of Eguns, Indians, Gypsies, et cetera, the Congos, there's all these different commissions, right, of Eguns that are out there. And believe it or not, we are very susceptible to attaching ourselves, them attaching to us, right, for one reason or another. Right? And that's a whole philosophical spin on Eguns and how Eguns come into our lives. And we're not going to get into that one right now. Maybe in another video or another podcast, we'll talk about it. But I need you guys to understand that advice that you get at that moment is that gut feeling. You guys ever feel that gut feeling like, man, you're driving and something's telling you, man, I need to go left. But instead you go right because you want to follow the GPS because the GPS is always right? But you knew you should have gone left. And then later on you're kicking yourself in the butt because you're like, man, I should have went left. Because maybe you're stuck in traffic. Maybe, I don't know, for whatever reason, right? And the reason why I say that is because that intuition, that gut feeling, right? That's your Eguns. Those are your spirits talking to you. That's the reason you feel the way you feel sometimes and you get that push, right? You ever get into maybe a car accident, you're like, oh my God, I don't know how I got out of this. Yeah, maybe it was Orisha. Maybe it was Egun. There's a lot of different aspects to this that we're just not putting together. So imagine if you were to able to get to some advice, maybe not an ita, because that wouldn't be the appropriate term for this, but you get some advice for your eguns. Now you know how to maneuver yourself when we talk about your intuition, on how you should align yourself when it comes to the spirit world, what you should be doing with the eguns. Because maybe your relationship with the egun is just to get scratched. Maybe you got to get scratched. Maybe you got to go into palo. Maybe you have to work palo. I mean, you got to receive pots, and you got to kind of move up that chain within that hierarchy of that section of worship. Right? There's just so much there that we do in Lokumi that you just don't see and you should share. No, I'm not bagging on them. I'm not saying anything crazy about them. I'm just saying that's something that we just got to think about. Because something that we do very well is that we look at that trifecta of things and we balance that out very well. Egun, Orisha, Ifa, right? So between Ifa working with Ocha and Ifa and Ocha working with Eguns, which it could be Palo, could be a lot of things. Or just maybe it's just a spiritual mass. Maybe you have nothing to do with Palo, but maybe that table, what we call bóveda, is your power. That's the reason we have to look at all angles. We just have to. So, I wanted to share that out there. You know why? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I think we are losing focus on what is the purpose of receiving the things that we get. Because we want to be able to walk in the mansion. We want to be able to walk into our rooms. We want to be able to understand our intuition. We want to be able to drive ourselves to a spiritual path, a spiritual development and enlightenment to make us better people. The goal is are you listening? The goal is, are you on the right path? The goal is, what is your next move? The goal is, if you're great at one thing and you're lacking in another, are you exploring the options of understanding where you're lacking? Are you looking at the advice of that particular Orisha in order to strengthen your life? This is all about betterment, people. This is not about, hey, I'm going to throw some brujeria over here, some witchcraft over here. No. Is there a time and place for everything? Yes. But I think we need to get back to the basics. I think you got to understand the foundation. You got to understand where you're going. You got to understand how to get there. You got to understand how to drive the car. You can't jump right on a bicycle and you never rode a bicycle and you think you know how to ride it. No, how about we learn? How about we put some training wheels on? Get your training wheels on. Now you understand it. Now you can't say you don't understand it. Now there's no excuses. Find yourself a mentor. Find yourself a spiritual leader of some sort to guide you in all angles. All angles. Get your itas. Get your advice in Ifa. That's a babalao. Go get your advice in Ocha. Find yourself a godmother. Okay? Go get your advice from the eguns. Get that spiritual misas going. If you got to get scratched, go get scratched. Find your tata, your yeye, whatever it is, you got to go do. So you can get the advice so you can be successful. Let's stop messing around. Let's get to it. All right? Stop making excuses. Get after it. And if you're not getting after it, you want to know how to get after it, shoot me an email. Look at my YouTube videos. That's educational. That's not scolding. That's not direct like this one. This is me. Basically, I don't want to say I'm venting, but I think there's just some things that need to be heard and need to be spoken directly. And this is one of those topics. Come on, people. Let's get with it. Let's evolve our faith and let's take it to the next level. Right? This world is not going to wait on us. All right? If we don't take care of our own, ain't nobody going to take care of you better than you. And let me tell you this last thing before I even get off here, because this is the most important piece. Your spiritual leaders, all right? Your spiritual leaders, the ones you choose, the ones that are going to help you dissect your itas, the ones that are going to help you dissect the consejos, the advice given to you by whatever orisha, whatever egun. those are not your friends. Do not get it twisted. Now, those are your spiritual leaders. Now, within the process, you begin to build a bond and you're able to make it work. And now that becomes a friend / spiritual leader. Many blessings to you. Beautiful. The evolution was there. But if not, you're not looking for a spiritual leader to be BFFs. You're not looking for a spiritual leader to be your best friend. It's just not, that's not the case. Because you know what a spiritual leader does? You know what a godfather, a padrino, right? A madrina does? They don't betray you. They don't backstab you. They don't sell you out. They don't sugarcoat, right? They're not going to take sides. They're going to be there for you 24/7, 365, right? And they're not going to be prejudiced to anything. Their investment to you has no emotional tie other than the spiritual, which has an emotional concept to it. I won't tell you that because I love my God kids and I want what's best for my God kids. But I love them in a different way because those are my God kids. That's something that I think is lost nowadays. Nowadays, I see a lot of people willing to take God kids on and expect certain things from God kids. The expectations are wrong. I believe that you have one relationship, one responsibility, one expectation, and that's to help in the development of your spiritual growth. That's it. That is the relationship between a godparent and a godchild. Everything else is extra. Always remember, we have to stick to the foundation of things. So, find a godparent that's going to help you. Don't find the godparent that you want. Find the godparent that you need in your life. Because the other piece of that too is some people don't have thick skin. Some people have a little weak skin, right? You don't like being told the truth. You don't like being told you can't do something. You don't like being told that you are not walking on cloud 9 and you actually on cloud 2. You're barely making it to 3. You don't like being told your flaws. So what you want is somebody who's going to tell you that you're great. What you want is somebody who tells you that you're the next hot thing. What you want is not necessarily what you need. Let's get out of the illusion that we might be living. And let's get into the truth of the life we're living. Let's listen to what the Orishas have to say. Let's listen to what Ifa has to say. Let's listen to what the Egun's got to say. So with that said, I'm going to jump off of my rant because I get it. I'm ranting, guys. I get it. But that's what the podcast was for, right? That's what we're going to tell you. Real talk, right? So if you're dealing with godparents and it doesn't make sense and they're not there for your spiritual development, and don't even get me started on the ones that are sleeping with each other or the ones that are taking them for their money or the ones that are living with each other or the ones that are just dependent on each other. Whoo, boy, we got to be careful with that, guys. We got to be careful. All right, the dependency should not be the godparent on the godchild. The dependency should probably be more on the godchild to the godparent because they're looking for the spiritual growth. They're looking and they are putting their trust into that godparent, right? And that comes with ethical and moral values. So I'll leave it like that. So with that said, guys, Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, much love to you all. And I will talk to you again on another podcast.